Hello, this is Danny Raymond, the voice behind Ray's Guide, and it seems to be a standard among Star Citizen YouTubers to make a start of the year look-ahead video. And I've been looking at more than a few of them and have come to the conclusion that they're all wrong. And I'm going to start with my own predictions by saying that my first prediction about 2023 is that my predictions will be wrong. Except, of course, the prediction that I would be wrong, which would then be right, and perhaps the only prediction that I was right on. I did go into prediction video about 2022, and yes, it was mostly wrong, and only a little bit right, which if you look by comparison, the prediction video did about something presumably far more complex, the 2022 supply and prices for graphics card, turned out to be spot on. And if you listen to what I said about NFTs, you most likely did get out in time. So it's not that I'm bad at making predictions. It's that last year was a bad time to be trying to make predictions about Star Citizen. And next year isn't going to be any better. Imagine, in fact, that my 2022 predictions had been great. Imagine if a year ago I said that in less than a year's time, even before server meshing, that we would be regularly playing on 150-person servers and not really having a problem with it. You would have certainly called me crazy and said that my prediction was ridiculous. If a year ago I said that a server event would more than double the size of Orison and have us dropping tanks out of Hercules onto city platforms, you would have had the same reaction, calling me crazy and that I was being ridiculous in my predictions. And yet, Siege of Orison certainly would have already been under early development. If I had predicted at the start of 2022 that even the simplest of server meshing and pyro wouldn't be arriving until the end of 2023, I would have been labeled a pessimistic hater. And yet, here we are. So it wasn't that my predictions about 2022 were wrong, but everybody's was wrong. And we had no clue about the defining events of 2022. And this video is about why we are not likely to be doing much better in our predictions for this year. So why has Star Citizen entered a phase of being so difficult to predict? Based on the letters from the chairman, even Chris Roberts is having trouble predicting it. First and foremost, the Squadron Curtain. So much of the resources in development are now exclusively dedicated to Squadron 42, and most of that is shrouded in secrecy. So there is this massive cadre of developers working on things, some of which we have been told a little about, and some being kept mysterious deliberately. But there is more than just whether these features are finished. We've been told that when they are finished with features, they will be moved intact and completed to the persistent universe. CIG has followed this company message partly because it makes the road ahead look much easier, and partly because it assures backers that are only interested in the persistent universe that all their money being spent on Squadron 42 is not being wasted from their standpoint. And much of that is true. Things like interaction systems, sounds, graphic systems, props, settings, planets, etc. are all common to both and easily transferred from one to the other. But with other things, particularly gameplay systems, there is a hard reality that's being soft-played. Squadron isn't just the single-player version of the persistent universe, and the persistent universe isn't just a multi-user version of Squadron. They aren't just separate games. They are different game genres. A single-player, military-focused, linear storyline RPG is a completely different genre than a massively multiplayer, multi-civilian career, open-world sandbox. Not everything is going to jump over from one to the other neatly. Many will need to be reworked and adjusted, and some shouldn't even be tried to be moved over at all. So let me take one example of something some are saying might be making an appearance in the PU in the next year. Master modes. Many backers are hearing statements that the developers have finally dialed in the perfect solution and think that it will be here soon. Put it on my list for 2023, they say. But what you might have missed on the Star Citizen Live on Master Modes is that they are only testing it for the ships in Squadron 42 and the missions of Squadron 42. And since programmers and testers are naturally curious folks, if they say that they are only looking at Squadron 42 ships, it means that they have been ordered to only look at Squadron 42 ships. And their claims to have found a solution means that they have found a solution for Squadron 42. Now, how much of an absurd optimist would you need to be in order to think that the solution for, let's say, 7 ships operating in a narrow scope of missions is also going to be, untouched, the solution for 107 ships operating in entirely different mission scopes? So rather than it being the start of master modes in the PU, it will be the start of discovering how master modes don't work in the PU and how they will need to be altered. But since they won't be going back and altering the perfect solution for Squadron 42, they will be trying to alter it for the PU in ways that can be papered over as the difference between military and civilian operations and the slight difference in time periods between the two games. But if you are expecting a simple drop-in from Squadron 42 to the PU of master modes or many other things, then you will likely be disappointed. The other thing that makes Star Citizen notoriously difficult to predict right now is trying to figure out what is blocking what. And this may be a case of where a lot of predictors may be overly pessimistic. For example, right now we have two big blocker technologies being worked on: persistent ND streaming and server meshing. And we're going to be getting persistent ND streaming first because server meshing is itself being blocked by persistent ND streaming. But when you look at things on the horizon, I see some predictors saying that everything is going to be delayed by the delay in server meshing, the right bubble here, when in fact much of it is only being blocked by persistent ND streaming, the left bubble. Those things in the left bubble don't have to wait for server meshing, yet I see plenty of people believing that everything is being blocked by server meshing and pyro. So generally speaking, how do you know which to put in each of these bubbles? Well, if it needs large player counts and really large areas of operation, then it is in the right bubble. But if what it needs is longer multi-session game loops, then the thing that has been blocking it is PES, and presumably it can be started to roll out in a pre-4.0 patch. So what falls under that category? Some possibilities are cargo missions and other further development of the cargo systems, bounty hunting where you have to actually catch and deliver the target, kidnapping missions, essentially the less respectable form of that, the remaining types of salvage, in order of process, component extraction, fluids and gas removal, and frame grinding and refining, ship armor, component level damage, failure and repair, towing, more extensive repair, the resource management system, data running, and others. Technically speaking, none of those require server meshing, but all of them require a lot of complex things need to stay in or about your ship or wreck from one game session to the next. In other words, persistence. Does this mean that all those things are going to pop in with release immediately following 3.18? No, there isn't enough programmers, which brings up the next mystery that is making Star Citizen hard to predict. What is the rest of CIG been preparing for? Some might expect that none of these things they began to work with until persistent ND streaming is a reality. But that is not how complex software projects are done. You see, the very first thing that's done with a code module, such as persistent ND streaming for a feature, is that they develop and publish an interface specification that will say what the module is capable of doing and how you make requests to and pass information to it, and what will be the format and results of the information that comes from it. Think of it like the architectural plans for a building, which the actual builders, the programmers, will then create the building to match. But with the plans in hand, you don't have to wait for the building to be completed before planning what furniture and equipment you're going to put in with it and how you're going to make use of the building. You won't actually be able to move in, of course, but you can do a lot to be ready to move in. So what have they been preparing? What has the rest of the development staff been doing while waiting, just like we have for 3.18? Because as we should now well know, development is specialized, and the network and database programmers behind persistent ND streaming and server meshing are only a few of the many disciplines that are essentially waiting on them. What have they been working on? Pet projects like racetracks or side projects like shipwrecks or, well, what? Anyway, we'll get our first indications of what the answers to these questions will be when they finally send 3.18 to live and add another release to the progress tracker. In the meantime, all I can say about 2023 is that it's likely to be a year alternating between surprising and frustrating. Either way, as always, my touchstone will always be to have fun already. Now, for an update on our ship giveaways. First, we have the Waiting for 3.18 Piloting Skills Contest for the most amazing landing of a ship Hercules size or larger for your choice of the Crusader Spirit Series ships. See the link in the description for that. There are still a lot of possibilities to be explored. And then there is the Grow the Channel ship giveaway for the winner's choice of the Galaxy Complete, the multi-role mining moving medical machine, or that brand new big box bargain bazaar, the Merchantman. One entry per video. Current members enter automatically as always, and everyone else just subscribe and comment with the secret word. And the secret word for this video is what I use as an example of what may not be quite so smooth a transition from Squadron 42 to the persistent universe. Fly safe, keep it real, and I'll see you in the verse. This is Danny Raymond for Ray's Guide.